You have looked at a number, printed on a document, deposited into an account on a predictable day each month, and somewhere inside you, without ever choosing to do so, you decided that number was the boundary of your life. Not a boundary of your current employment, not a boundary of one particular arrangement, the boundary of your life, the ceiling of what is possible for you, the final answer to the question of how much wealth you are allowed to receive. You have looked at your salary and called it your future, and almost no one around you has told you that this is one of the most quietly devastating errors a person can make. Wallace Wattles understood something about the human condition that most people in financial pressure never pause long enough to see. He understood that the visible supply arriving in your life right now is not the source of your supply. It is only one channel through which the source is currently choosing to flow. The distinction between those two things, between the channel and the source, is not a small spiritual technicality. It is the difference between a mind that expands toward wealth and a mind that slowly seals itself inside the limits of a paycheck. This teaching is not about leaving your job. It is about leaving the belief that your job is the origin of everything you are allowed to receive. There is a rhythm that governs the financial life of most people, and it begins almost the moment they enter the working world. There is a date when money arrives. There is a list of obligations that consumes most of what arrives. There is a small remainder, if there is any remainder at all, that is held nervously until the next arrival date. And somewhere in the repetition of this cycle, a belief takes root that is far more dangerous than any bill or debt or financial obligation. The belief that the arrival date is permanent, that the amount is permanent, that the channel is the limit. Think about what the salary structure does to the imagination over time. It teaches you to think in cycles. It teaches you to plan in cycles. It teaches you to dream in cycles. You begin to measure possibility by what the next deposit can cover. You begin to evaluate opportunities by whether they can replace or add to the number you already know. Your financial imagination, which was once capable of conceiving of wealth in any form, from any direction, through any arrangement, slowly conforms itself to the shape of a pay schedule. And what conforms to a pay schedule cannot easily see beyond a pay schedule. There are raises, of course, a small percentage negotiated carefully, often requiring months of conversation, documentation of performance, and political navigation within an organization whose interests are not identical to yours. The raise is presented as progress, and in a narrow sense it is. But notice what it does to the imagination. A raise inside the same channel does not teach the mind that supply can come from unlimited directions. It teaches the mind that supply is approved or denied by a single structure, and that the correct response to wanting more is to ask the same channel for a larger flow. The channel remains the authority. The channel remains the limit. The raise changes the number. It does not change the belief. There are industries that have natural ceilings. There are roles with compressed compensation ranges. There are markets where the demand for certain skills has been declining for years. There are regions where the economy has contracted in ways that no individual effort can reverse. There are people who find themselves in all of these situations simultaneously, working faithfully, performing well, and still watching the gap between their income and their expenses refuse to close. They are not failing because they are not working. They are constrained because the channel they are depending on has a fixed width, and they have not yet been taught to look for other channels. Age also enters the equation in ways that are rarely discussed with honesty. There comes a point in many people's working lives when the salary that once felt like a foundation begins to feel like a trap. The years of service have value inside the current arrangement, but that value does not always translate easily to other arrangements. The accumulation of experience, which should expand possibility, can feel like it is anchoring a person to one organization, one industry, one specific channel. And the longer a person has depended on a single channel, the more threatening it becomes to imagine the channel changing, narrowing or closing entirely. Responsibilities compound the weight of salary dependence in ways that feel completely reasonable from the outside. There are children, there are aging parents, there are mortgages, there are health considerations. There are people whose stability depends on this person's income, and so the salary is not only a financial instrument, it has become a moral obligation. To question the salary, to look beyond the salary, to imagine a different relationship with income, can feel like a betrayal of the people who depend on its arrival. This is one of the most powerful and invisible chains that salary dependence creates. It becomes not just a financial ceiling, but a moral one. The conversations that happen inside a person's mind during financial pressure are rarely about expansion. They are almost always about survival and calculation. How many days until the deposit? How much is already committed? What can be delayed? What cannot? What is the minimum that must remain? These are not the thoughts of someone who believes that supply flows freely and abundantly from an infinite source. These are the thoughts of someone who believes that there is one door, that the door is only barely open, and that their entire life depends on that door never closing. That is the mental state that salary dependence, at its extreme, creates. And yet this is not a conversation about poverty of ambition. Many people who live inside the salary ceiling are deeply ambitious. Many of them work hard, serve well, think clearly, and genuinely want more for themselves and the people they love. The problem is not the absence of effort. The problem is that all of that effort, all of that desire, all of that ambition has been directed toward managing and improving a single channel rather than recognizing the unlimited source behind all channels. That recognition, when it finally arrives, changes everything, not by making the work disappear, by making the mind available to more than the work it currently knows. Here is what makes this teaching necessary and difficult at the same time. Most people who will receive this message already believe, on some level, in a source greater than their salary. They may call it God, they may call it the universe, they may call it divine supply, infinite intelligence, formless substance, or simply the feeling that there is something larger at work beneath the visible surface of life. They carry this belief sincerely. They return to it in prayer. They affirm it in quiet moments. They have read the books, walked the path, and genuinely trusted that an invisible power is present in their lives. And then they open their bank account and the belief vanishes. This is the inner contradiction that Wallace Wattles was pointing toward, even when he was not naming it in these exact words. The mind can hold two beliefs simultaneously that are in complete conflict with each other. One belief says that there is an infinite source of supply, that God or the universe is unlimited, that provision can come from any direction, that divine intelligence is always at work opening channels and arranging circumstances beyond what the visible mind can calculate. The other belief says that if the paycheck stops, everything stops. These two beliefs cannot both be true, but many people live inside both of them every day without ever noticing the contradiction. What tends to happen in practice is that the spiritual belief becomes the belief of the mountaintop, and the salary belief becomes the belief of the valley. On the mountaintop, in meditation, in prayer, in moments of stillness and clarity, the person genuinely feels the presence of a source beyond salary. They feel the truth of infinite supply. They return to the valley with that feeling intact, and it sustains them for a while. But the valley has bills in it. The valley has a boss in it. The valley has a pay date in it, and an obligation list that is longer than the deposit. And when the valley becomes loud enough, the mountaintop feeling fades. The salary reasserts itself as the only God that actually pays. This is not a failure of faith in the romantic sense. This is a structural problem. The spiritual belief has not been applied specifically enough to the financial domain to displace the salary belief at the level of emotional authority. A person can believe in divine supply in general terms, while simultaneously believing that their specific supply is entirely controlled by their employer. General spiritual belief and specific financial belief are operating at different levels and in different directions, and the specific belief, because it is attached to visible evidence, tends to win the daily argument. Watch what happens on the day before payday when the account is low. Watch what happens when the company announces restructuring. Watch what happens when a trusted colleague is let go unexpectedly, and the person sitting at their own desk suddenly wonders whether their role is as secure as they assumed. In each of these moments, a choice is made at a level below conscious thought. The choice is between trusting the source and trusting the channel, and almost universally, when the channel is visibly threatened, the emotional system treats that threat as an existential emergency. Because emotionally, the channel and the source have become the same thing. Losing the channel feels like losing the source. The paycheck has, for many people, become the functional god of possibility. Not in a way they would ever say out loud, and not in a way they would consciously choose. But in the way it actually governs behavior, it operates as the authority over what is possible for them. When the paycheck is sufficient, possibility feels open. When the paycheck is threatened, possibility closes. When the paycheck disappears, something that feels very close to the loss of hope arrives. That is the emotional signature of a god, not a channel. And this is what must be honestly examined. The deepest dimension of this contradiction is that it limits not just income but identity. The person who has emotionally merged with their salary as the boundary of their life is not simply earning a certain amount. They are becoming a certain amount. Their sense of what they deserve, what they can ask for, what opportunities they can realistically pursue, what future they are allowed to imagine, all of it calibrates itself quietly to the number that arrives each month. The salary is not just a financial fact. It has become the inner image of the self. And inner images, when they go unexamined, become self-fulfilling. There is something extraordinarily honest that Wallace Wattles asked of his readers, and it is the same honesty this teaching is asking of you now. Before anything can change in the outer financial life, something must change in the inner assignment of authority. The salary must be relocated in the mind from the category of source to the category of channel. It must be recognized as one current expression of supply, not the total of all possible supply. It must be respected as a real and present flow without being worshipped as the only possible flow. That relocation is not a small adjustment. For many people, it is one of the most significant inner movements they will make in their entire financial life. And it begins right here, in the willingness to see the contradiction clearly. Wallace Wattles did not write for people who had already found financial ease. He wrote for people who were sitting inside visible limitation and trying to understand why the laws of supply seemed to be working for others while remaining silent for them. He understood the condition of a person who looks at a closed door and begins to believe that the closed door is a final verdict. And he offered something that was not a motivational speech and was not a prosperity formula. He offered a precise correction of the fundamental error in how most people understand the origin of money. The teaching rests on a distinction that sounds simple but has tremendous practical power when it is actually internalized. There is a source, and there are channels. The source is the formless, infinite substance from which all visible wealth ultimately derives. The channels are the particular visible arrangements through which that wealth is currently flowing into a person's life. An employer is a channel. A client is a channel. A business is a channel. An investment is a channel. An unexpected gift, an inheritance, a contract, a partnership, a debt that is forgiven, a bill that is reduced without explanation, a stranger who introduces a connection at the right moment. All of these are channels. None of them is the source. All of them are temporary forms through which the source has chosen, in a given season, to move. Wattles taught that the formless substance that underlies all visible reality is thinking substance. It responds to thought. It takes form in the physical world, according to the inner impressions that minds hold with clarity and faith. This is not magical thinking. It is a statement about the nature of causation. The visible supply appearing in a person's life is the effect of a prior cause, and that cause operates at the level of thought, belief, image, and inner expectation. If the inner image is one of a single channel that is barely adequate, the visible supply will tend to organize itself around that image. The inner image is the instruction. The visible world is the fulfillment of that instruction. This is why Wattles insisted with such precision on forming a clear, unwavering mental image of the life you wish to live, and holding that image with gratitude and faith, rather than allowing it to be displaced by the anxiety of present circumstances. The image is not a wish. The image is an order placed with the formless substance, but the order cannot be received by a substance that has been told, through the emotional authority granted to salary, that the only channel available is already fully occupied. The image of expanded supply must be held inside a mind that believes the source behind all channels is unlimited. That belief is the opening through which additional channels can begin to form. What many people receive when they first encounter Wattles is the instruction to form the mental image and hold it. What they sometimes miss is the equally important instruction about the nature of the receiving side. Wattles was precise about this. A person cannot simultaneously hold an image of unlimited supply and emotionally treat one limited channel as the final authority over their life. The two states are in conflict. The image of abundance is constantly overridden by the emotional authority of the paycheck, and so the image never settles deeply enough into the formless substance to begin organizing new channels. It remains an aspiration instead of becoming a command. Wattles also taught about action with great care. He never suggested that the thinking person should become a passive dreamer, waiting for money to fall from invisible places. He spoke of acting in the certain way, which meant taking action that was aligned with the mental image and the trust in the source, rather than action driven by fear, desperation, or calculation. The certain way is not a specific set of tasks. It is a quality of movement. A person acting in the certain way is moving toward their vision with calm, purposeful confidence, doing the best work available to them in the present, while remaining open to new channels forming through new arrangements, new ideas, new connections, and new opportunities. The person who has confined their entire financial imagination to the salary channel is not acting in the certain way. They may be working hard, but they are working from inside a mental cage. Every action they take is filtered through the question of how it relates to the salary, the raise, or the continuation of the current channel. They have not yet made the inner move that Wattles was describing. The inner move is not quitting the job, it is relocating the authority. It is returning the source to its proper position as origin and allowing the salary to occupy its proper position as channel. When that relocation happens internally, the action that follows naturally begins to expand beyond the current channel. Wattles wrote that a person who achieves wealth through the science of getting rich does not take it from anyone else. They do not compete for a limited supply. They create additional supply by drawing from the formless substance through their aligned inner state and purposeful outer action. This is the opposite of the salary mentality, which, by its very structure, teaches a person that they must compete for a fixed amount distributed by a single authority. The salary structure says there is a limit, and you are negotiating your share of it. Wattles says there is no ultimate limit, and the formless source is responding to the quality of your inner command. This distinction between competition and creation is one of the most liberating ideas in Wattles' entire body of work. The person locked inside the salary ceiling is often unconsciously living in a competitive relationship with their employer, with colleagues, with market conditions, with economic forces. They are calculating their position within a system that appears to have fixed limits. Wattles redirects the entire conversation. He says the limits you see are not the limits of the source. They are the limits of the channel you are currently in, and the source is not confused about what is available. The source is unlimited. The only question is whether your inner state is open enough to allow additional channels to form. Think about what this means in practical terms for someone receiving this teaching while sitting inside a salary they have outgrown, working inside an organization whose ceiling they have already reached, in an industry whose compensation structures feel like walls. Wattles is not saying that the employer will suddenly change or that the industry will suddenly transform. He is saying that the source, which is the origin of all channels, is not confined to the current arrangement. New channels are not created by the employer. They are created by the source responding to an inner state that is aligned with expanded supply. The employer may remain exactly as it is. A new channel can form beside it, around it, or entirely outside of it. The formless substance, as Wattles understood it, is always in motion toward form. It is always responding. It is always organizing. The question is what it is being asked to organize. A mind that has granted total authority to the salary channel is asking the formless substance to maintain and slightly improve one particular arrangement. A mind that has restored the source to its proper position as unlimited origin is asking the formless substance to open whatever channels are available, visible and invisible, expected and unexpected, familiar and entirely new. These two requests are answered differently because they are fundamentally different requests. Wattles' law is not complicated when it is stated plainly. Supply flows from source. Source is unlimited. Channels are temporary and multiple. The current channel is not the source. Confusion between the channel and the source is the primary inner error that limits financial expansion. Correcting that confusion is the first and most important step in the science of getting rich. Everything else, the mental image, the gratitude, the purposeful action, the readiness to act on opportunity, all of it depends on this foundational correction. If the correction is not made, no amount of affirmation, visualization, or hard work will break the ceiling, because the ceiling is not in the employer's budget. It is in the mind's assignment of authority. There is an image that carries the teaching more simply than any doctrine, and it is the image of water. Think of a spring deep underground, fed by an aquifer that has no visible limit from the surface. The spring produces water continuously. It does not require your management. It does not require your calculation. It does not need you to understand its source in order to continue flowing. Now think of a pipe that has been attached to that spring. The pipe carries the water to a particular location. The pipe is useful. The pipe is real. The water flowing through the pipe is real, but the pipe is not the spring. The pipe is a channel, and if the pipe becomes blocked or narrow, or if it is rerouted or disconnected, the spring does not stop. The spring continues. Only the pipe has changed. This is the relationship between your salary and the source. Most people live as though the pipe is the spring. They manage the pipe. They worry about the pipe. They negotiate the dimensions of the pipe. They are terrified of the pipe becoming narrower because they have forgotten that the spring behind it is not subject to the same limitations as the pipe. When a raise is denied, it feels like the spring has become smaller. When a job is lost, it feels like the spring has dried up. When an industry contracts, it feels like the water itself has become less. But none of these things are happening to the spring. All of these things are happening to the pipe. And the spring is still flowing. The spring is always flowing. The question is whether your mind is open to allowing a new pipe to be laid. Wattles' original insight was that the formless substance is the spring behind all visible channels. It is not confined to employers. It is not confined to industries. It is not confined to the economic conditions of a particular year or the mood of a particular market. It is the original creative intelligence from which all financial forms emerge. Your employer did not create the wealth flowing through your paycheck. Your employer is a channel through which some portion of the formless substance's abundant flow is currently reaching you. That is an important distinction. Employers do not manufacture supply. They are at present one passage for it. The ocean is another image that carries this meaning. Imagine the ocean as the total of all possible supply flowing from the infinite source. Every channel of income in the world is like a river that traces back to that ocean. Some rivers are wide, some are narrow. Some have been flowing for a long time. Some are newly forming. Some have recently dried up and redirected themselves into new beds. The ocean does not mourn the river that dries up, because the ocean knows that the water has not disappeared. It has found a new path. It has formed a new channel. The total supply has not diminished. Only one particular form of its expression has changed. When your salary is threatened, when it stagnates, when it seems to be the only river visible on your map, the ocean has not dried up. The ocean is full. You are looking at the map of the river when you should be looking at the direction of the ocean. A pipe does not choose its own diameter. A river does not choose its own width. The water does not argue with the banks that contain it. But a human being with a conscious mind, with the capacity for thought, faith, and aligned action, is not confined to accepting the current dimensions of the current channel as permanent. A human being can, through inner state and purposeful action, become available to new channels forming. This is the distinction Wattles was drawing between a person who is alive in the universe as a creative presence and a person who is simply a passive recipient of whatever the current channel decides to deliver. You are not a passive recipient. You are a creating being. And creating beings do not build their identity around one channel. The forgotten meaning of the source and channel distinction is this. The channel can carry only as much as its current form allows, but the source has no such limitation. You cannot make the ocean larger by widening a single pipe, but you can become available to more of the ocean by opening more channels. Every time a person in financial limitation discovers a new source of income, whether it is a part-time service, a skill monetized in a new context, an investment that begins producing returns, a creative work that finds an audience, or a partnership that opens a new market, what has happened is not that the ocean has grown. The ocean was already full. What has happened is that a new pipe has been laid from an already full ocean to a person who was previously receiving from only one narrow connection. This is why Wattles spoke of becoming open to wealth from all directions. Not from one direction slightly improved, but from all directions. The formless substance is not directional. It is omnipresent. It is everywhere. It is present in the conversation at the dinner table with a person who will later make an introduction. It is present in the idea that arrives during a quiet walk that becomes eventually a new channel of supply. It is present in the unexpected opportunity that looks nothing like a salary and is therefore rejected by a mind that has been trained to recognize only one form of financial delivery. The source is everywhere. The channels are simply the temporary forms through which an unlimited source is choosing, in a given season, to make itself visible to a specific life. The reason this meaning has been forgotten is that salary is regular and visible, while the source is irregular and invisible. The salary arrives on a specific date in a specific amount and creates a specific record. It is concrete. It is measurable. It is defensible in a conversation with a bank, a landlord, or a family member asking about financial stability. The source, on the other hand, cannot be shown on a statement. It cannot be predicted with certainty. It cannot be calculated on a spreadsheet. It asks for a different kind of trust than the trust that a pay stub provides, and in a world that rewards visible proof above invisible faith, most people have quietly abandoned the source and chosen the statement. Not because they are wrong to value stability, but because they have not been taught that stability built on a single visible channel is actually far more fragile than stability rooted in the recognition of an unlimited invisible source. Wattles was not asking his readers to ignore their salary or pretend that bills do not require payment. He was asking for something far more sophisticated than that. He was asking for a relocation of trust, not a destruction of the visible income, but a correction of where the deepest authority resides. The salary does its work when the inner authority belongs to the source. The salary becomes a ceiling only when the inner authority has been surrendered to the salary itself. This is the distinction, this is the correction, and this, quietly and completely, is the forgotten meaning at the center of Wallace Wattles' most important teaching. The pipe carries water. Honor the pipe for carrying the water, but do not call the pipe the spring. The spring is deeper than the pipe. The spring is older than the pipe. The spring will continue long after the pipe has been replaced by a wider and more generous arrangement. You do not need to destroy the pipe to honor the spring. You only need to remember, every day that the paycheck arrives, that what is arriving is a channel expressing an unlimited source, and that the source has far more to give than the current channel has yet been asked to carry. There is an error that operates so deeply and so quietly that most people never identify it as an error at all. They experience its effects constantly. They feel the constriction it creates. They live inside the ceiling it produces, but they have named the error something else. They have called it responsibility. They have called it realism. They have called it learning from experience. They have called it wisdom about the way money actually works. And because the error has been given these respectable names, it has remained unexamined and unchallenged for years, sometimes for entire lifetimes. The error is this: the belief that money can only arrive through the channel you already know. This belief is not held consciously. It lives at a level beneath deliberate choice. Ask most people whether they believe that money can only come from their job, and they will say no immediately. They know in the abstract that other forms of income exist. They have heard of people whose financial life changed through unexpected means. They are not unaware that channels beyond salary are theoretically possible. But then watch what happens in the actual decisions of a day. Watch what happens when an idea arrives that could generate income in a form that does not resemble a paycheck. Watch what happens when an opportunity presents itself that requires a different kind of effort, a different kind of trust, a different kind of action than what the salary channel demanded. The belief reveals itself in the response. The body tightens. The mind calculates risk. The voice of caution speaks immediately, reminding the person of all the reasons the familiar channel is safer, and the new channel closes before it was ever truly considered. The error produces a specific pattern of perception. The person who has deeply merged with their salary as the only possible source begins, without realizing it, to filter their reality through that belief. Opportunities appear in their environment that do not fit the salary template, and those opportunities are not seen as opportunities at all. They are seen as distractions, as risks, as unsuitable suggestions from people who do not understand the person's specific responsibilities. A skill that could be taught to others for income is dismissed as something no one would pay for. A creative work that could reach an audience is never offered because the salary mind has no category for creative income that has not already been proven. A connection who could open a new channel is never followed up with because the person has not been able to calculate in advance exactly how the connection would translate to financial result. The invisible error creates an invisible filter, and the filter is very efficient. It removes from consideration any form of supply that does not arrive in the shape of a paycheck. It is not that the opportunities do not exist, they exist. It is that the mind has been conditioned to recognize one form of delivery and to treat all other forms as unreliable, impractical, or not meant for someone in this person's position. The filter is not protecting the person from bad decisions. The filter is preventing the person from receiving supply that is already available and already trying to find a way into their life. Think about the last 3 times you encountered an idea, a conversation, an opportunity, or a possibility that could have represented a new channel of income. What was the first internal response? Was it genuine openness, followed by careful discernment, or was it immediate dismissal, dressed as prudence? The dismissal comes in many forms. It comes as the calculation of what would have to change. It comes as the list of reasons why this particular person, with this particular set of circumstances, could not pursue that particular channel right now. It comes as the reminder of the family responsibilities that make this not the right time. It comes as the memory of someone else who tried something similar and struggled. The dismissal is fast. It has been practiced for years. And what it is actually saying beneath all the reasonable-sounding language is this: I have already decided that the current channel is the only channel, and I am not available to be changed. This error extends beyond missed income. It shapes how the person relates to people who appear in their life. A connection who works in an industry the person has never considered is treated as interesting but irrelevant. A conversation that could lead, through patient cultivation, to a new professional relationship is left at the surface because the salary mind does not know how to value a connection that is not immediately translatable to the current channel. An introduction that could eventually open a door to an entirely different financial arrangement is forgotten within days because it did not arrive in a form the salary mind could immediately process. Other people become channels or non-channels based on whether they fit the existing structure, rather than being recognized as potential connections through whom the source might be attempting to move. There is also an internal pattern that the error creates in relation to ideas. Creative ideas, business ideas, service ideas, and partnership ideas that could generate new channels arrive in the mind regularly. Wattles understood this. He spoke of the formless substance impressing ideas into aligned minds as a natural response to clear inner images of desired supply. But when those ideas arrive into a mind that is held hostage by the salary belief, they are processed through the wrong filter. They are evaluated not by the question of whether the source might be working through them, but by the question of whether they resemble the current channel closely enough to be worth pursuing. They almost never do, and so the ideas are dismissed, filed away, or forgotten. And the source, which was attempting to open a new channel through the vehicle of those ideas, finds the door closed. The most painful expression of this error is the moment when a person looks back over their financial life and begins to count the opportunities they declined, the ideas they ignored, the connections they did not follow up with, the doors they did not walk through because the doors did not look like salary. This is not a comfortable inventory, but it is a necessary one. Because the moment a person honestly recognizes how many channels the source was already forming and how consistently the salary belief caused those channels to be rejected before they could develop, the error becomes visible for the first time. And an error that is finally visible can finally be corrected. None of this is about blaming the self for past decisions. The error was not chosen deliberately. It was absorbed from a culture that teaches salary as the primary and most respectable form of supply, that measures a person's financial stability by the regularity of their employment income, and that treats any departure from the salary model as a sign of instability or poor judgment. The culture installed the error. The error did its work quietly. The correction does not require shame. It requires clarity. It requires the willingness to say, I have been filtering reality through the belief that money can only come from the channel I already know, and that belief has been quietly closing doors that the source was already opening. I am now willing to see differently. The first movement of the correction is not an action, it is a question. A single question asked honestly, daily, in the presence of ideas, opportunities, and connections. Might this be a channel the source is forming? Not, is this as safe as my salary? Not, does this resemble the income I already understand? But simply, might the source be working through this? That question, asked with genuine openness, begins to loosen the filter. It begins to make the mind available to perceive what was already present, but invisible, because the filter had not been asked to look for it. The error closes channels. The question reopens them. This teaching is not an encouragement to quit anything, to risk anything carelessly, or to chase every idea that arrives as though it were divine instruction. Discernment remains. Responsibility remains. The point is not to replace one form of recklessness with another. The point is to release the invisible error at the level of perception, so that the filter is no longer automatically rejecting channels before they are even honestly considered. The salary remains. The work continues. The responsibilities are honored. But the mind is no longer sealed inside the belief that the current arrangement is the final and total expression of all the supply the source is capable of delivering to this particular life. If the error remains unaddressed, no amount of effort will break the ceiling, because the ceiling is not in the job market, it is not in the economy, it is not in the employer's budget. It is in the assignment of authority that has quietly given the salary the power to define the total of possible supply. That is the error. Seeing it is the beginning of the correction. And the correction is the beginning of an entirely different financial life. Before this teaching can move any further, it must honor the truth that the salary error does not feel like an error. It feels like wisdom. It feels like prudence. It feels like the mature, responsible perspective of a person who has lived enough to know the difference between dreams and reality. It has all the emotional texture of hard-won knowledge rather than inherited limitation. This is why it persists so powerfully. You cannot correct an error simply by proving it is wrong. You must understand why it feels right before the person holding it will ever be willing to examine it honestly. The first reason salary dependence feels like wisdom is that stability is a genuine value, not an illusion. There are real people depending on real income arriving on real dates. There are children who eat because the paycheck comes. There are elderly parents whose needs are being met because of a dependable income. There is a mortgage being paid, a vehicle being maintained, a family being sheltered. These are not imaginary obligations. They are sacred ones, and any teaching that appears to trivialize them will be, and should be, immediately rejected. This teaching does not trivialize them. It honors them. The point is not that stability is a false value. The point is that the belief that only one channel can ever provide stability is a false conclusion drawn from a real value. The value of stability is wise. The conclusion that stability requires permanent loyalty to one channel is not. The second reason is cultural conditioning that runs very deep. Most people who live inside the salary ceiling were raised in households where employment was the correct, honorable, and responsible form of financial life. Education was the preparation for employment. Employment was the preparation for stability. Stability was the preparation for a good life. This is a coherent and not entirely wrong framework. The error is not in any of these individual steps. The error is in the invisible extension of the framework that says, and any deviation from the employment model represents irresponsibility, instability, or poor judgment. That extension is not wisdom. It is the weight of a cultural story that was true enough in a certain historical context and has been assumed to remain true indefinitely. The third reason is personal history. Many people have watched others lose stability through ventures that moved outside the salary model. They have watched a family member try a business that failed. They have watched a friend leave stable employment for a dream that did not materialize. They have personal memories of financial insecurity that arrived when the channel changed or closed unexpectedly. These memories are not false. These events happened. And the mind that carries these memories quite reasonably concludes that the salary channel, despite its limitations, is safer than the alternatives that its experience associates with loss and difficulty. This is not irrational. It is a learning drawn from actual experience. The problem is that the learning has been generalized beyond its proper scope, and the memory of one failed channel has been used to close the mind to all unfamiliar channels. The fourth reason is the asymmetry of risk perception. A potential loss always feels more immediate and more real than a potential gain of equal or greater value. This is not a personal failing. It is a deeply rooted aspect of how the mind processes uncertainty. A raise denied feels like a certain loss. An unexpected channel opening feels like an uncertain gain. The mind reaches automatically toward avoiding the certain loss and treats the uncertain gain with suspicion. And so the salary, even when it is clearly insufficient and demonstrably limited, continues to feel like the safer choice compared to the unknown. The unknown is not assessed on its actual merits. It is assessed by the mind's instinctive preference for the familiar over the uncertain. The fifth reason is the moral dimension of financial responsibility that was discussed earlier, but it deserves its own moment here because it is so powerful. Many people feel that exploring new channels of income while they have a current employer represents a form of disloyalty. They feel that the time and energy devoted to imagining or developing new possibilities is stolen from the employer who is currently paying them. They feel that even thinking about a different financial life is somehow a failure to honor the current arrangement with full commitment. This moral overlay makes the examination of new channels feel not just risky, but wrong. And when an inner examination feels morally wrong, it is extraordinarily difficult to pursue, even when the intellectual case for it is clear. The sixth reason is the exhaustion factor. A person who is working full-time, managing family responsibilities, navigating financial pressure, and doing all of this inside the weight of the anxiety that limited income produces, is genuinely tired. They do not have or believe they do not have the energy to think about new channels on top of everything else. The salary error is in this sense also a fatigue agreement. The mind says, I am doing everything I can to manage what I have. I do not have the bandwidth to investigate what else might be available. This is not laziness, it is genuine depletion. But the cost of it is that the very openness to new channels, which would eventually reduce the exhaustion by expanding the supply, is sacrificed to the demands of managing the existing channel in its current limited form. Understanding why the error feels like wisdom does not mean accepting it as wisdom. It means responding to it with the compassion that comes from recognizing a real struggle rather than a character flaw. The person who has been holding the salary as the source is not weak. They are not spiritually immature. They are a responsible, sincere human being who has been carrying the weight of real obligations inside a mental framework that has been, without their deliberate choice, closing channels that the source was already attempting to open. Compassion for that reality is not softness. It is the prerequisite for honest correction, because correction that is wrapped in shame is correction that will be quickly abandoned. Correction that is wrapped in understanding tends to stay. Wisdom knows the difference between a current channel and the ultimate source. Wisdom honors the channel for carrying what it carries. Wisdom takes the current channel seriously and works within it with commitment and excellence. And wisdom remains open, quietly and without panic, to the possibility that the source behind the channel is preparing a wider flow, a new arrangement, an additional door. Prudence is not the enemy of that openness. Recklessness is. And the two are not the same thing. The invitation of this teaching is not to be reckless. It is to be wise enough to stop calling the channel the spring. To understand how the source actually operates through channels, it is necessary to think carefully about what a channel is and what it is not. A channel is a visible arrangement through which supply currently flows. It has a form. It has a history. It has a structure that the mind can understand and communicate to others. It produces a result that can be measured on a statement, deposited in an account, and used to pay an obligation. It is real. It is valuable. It is operating. But it is a form, not a substance. It is a current expression, not the permanent truth of what is available to you from the formless source. The form can change. The form can expand. The form can multiply. The substance behind the form cannot be exhausted. Employment is a channel. Many people's financial lives include this channel because it is one of the most stable and familiar forms that the source uses to deliver supply in the modern economy. The employment channel has the advantage of regularity. It produces income on a predictable schedule. It comes with social structures, professional identities, and personal relationships that have genuine value beyond the financial. To recognize it as a channel rather than the source is not to diminish it. A river is not diminished by being recognized as a river rather than the ocean. The river is still a river. The water in it is still real. The recognition simply relocates the authority where it belongs, so that when the river narrows, the response is not despair, but the calm confidence that the ocean has not dried up. Business income is another channel. When a person takes a skill, a service, a product, or a creative work, and offers it directly to people who need it, a channel forms between the formless source and their financial life that is different in structure from the employment channel, but equally real in the supply it can carry. Many people who are locked inside the salary ceiling have underestimated this channel because they have associated it with complexity, risk, and a requirement of certainty before beginning. Wattles would say that the channel does not require certainty before it is opened. It requires aligned inner state, clear vision, and purposeful first steps. The certainty does not precede the channel. It develops through the experience of walking with the source as the new channel takes form. Gifts arrive as channels, not the casual meaning of the word, but the deeper meaning, unexpected provisions that arrive outside the frame of any arrangement or calculation. A family member who reduces a debt at an unexpected moment. A professional contact who refers a client unsolicited. A situation that resolves in a way that reduces an existing expense, which is functionally equivalent to receiving additional income. An institution that adjusts a fee, waives a penalty, or extends a grace period in a way that creates real breathing room. These are not coincidences. They are the source moving through people and situations that did not appear on any financial plan. To receive them as channels of the source is not to be naive. It is to maintain the mental posture that makes the mind available to recognize and receive what is arriving. Ideas function as channels in a form that most people underutilize. Wallace Wattles was explicit that the formless substance moves through aligned minds in the form of impressions, ideas, and intuitions that, when followed through purposeful action, create new channels of supply. An idea for a service that meets a need. An idea for a process that reduces waste and creates value. An idea for a connection between two people that creates an arrangement from which a new income stream emerges. An idea for a creative work that reaches an audience and generates a form of income that did not exist before the idea was acted upon. Ideas are not random neural events. They are, in the Wattles understanding, the formless substance communicating through a mind that is sufficiently aligned to receive the impression. The mind that is obsessed with the salary channel is too noisy to receive these impressions with clarity. Partnerships and collaborations form channels that neither partner could have formed alone. Two people, each carrying a different set of skills, relationships, or resources, meet at the right moment and discover that their combination creates a supply channel that exceeds what either of them was producing separately. This kind of channel cannot be planned in advance with precision. It emerges from the quality of the inner state each person brings to their interactions. A person who moves through the world as an open, creative, source-aligned presence tends to attract exactly the kind of collaborations that expand their channels. A person who moves through the world as a frightened, salary-dependent, closed presence tends to attract the reflection of their own limitation back to themselves. Royalties, licensing arrangements, and income from creative works represent channels of a particularly expansive kind. They are forms of supply that continue to flow after the initial creative effort has been completed. They represent the formless substance impressed upon the world through a creative act, continuing to produce visible supply long after the immediate labor is done. Not everyone will develop this form of channel, and no one should pursue it carelessly or with unrealistic expectations. But the existence of this channel as a real and legitimate form of supply that the source can provide is important for the mind that has been limiting itself to a single employment channel. The range of possible forms is wider than the salary belief has allowed you to see. Debt resolution is a form of channel opening that is rarely recognized as such, but it deserves to be named plainly. When a financial obligation that has been consuming income is resolved, reduced, renegotiated, or forgiven, the space that is created in the financial life is real supply. It is supply that arrives not through the addition of a new income, but through the reduction of an outflow. Wattles' principle of supply from the source is not limited to income. It includes any movement of the financial life toward greater ease, greater freedom, and greater capacity to receive. A person whose inner state shifts from fear to trust may find that obligations that seemed immovable begin to move in ways that cannot be fully explained by calculation alone. Unexpected connections are channels that deserve particular attention. The formless substance moves through people. It uses relationships, conversations, introductions, and encounters to bring the right information, the right opportunity, or the right resource into the life of a person who is aligned and available to receive it. This is not mystical in a way that removes practical responsibility. It is the natural behavior of a creative universe that is constantly in motion, constantly organizing, constantly arranging. The person who remains open, who follows up on connections, who takes conversations seriously as potential channels of the source, will find that the universe has a way of placing exactly the right people in their path at exactly the right moment. The person who is sealed inside the salary belief rarely notices these connections, because they do not look like salary. Reduced expenses and unexpected savings are channel forms that deserve mention, not because they are glamorous, but because they are real. When the cost of something necessary decreases, when a better arrangement replaces an expensive one, when a resource becomes available through a connection that removes a cost that was previously unavoidable, supply has arrived. It has not arrived in the familiar form of increased income, but the mathematical effect on the financial life is identical. A channel has opened. The source has moved through circumstances and arrangements to create greater supply for a life that was aligned with receiving it. The point of examining these multiple channel forms is not to give the mind a shopping list of income types to pursue simultaneously with anxious energy. It is to disrupt the deeply held assumption that there is only one valid form that financial supply can take. Every item on this list represents a form that the source actually uses. Every form has appeared in the lives of real people as a genuine expression of the formless substance taking shape in response to aligned inner states and purposeful action. The salary is not unusual for being a channel. It is unusual only for being treated as the only channel, the final authority, and the total measure of what the source is capable of delivering. Think about the landscape of channels available to any human being living in an interconnected world. The opportunities for exchange of value are not narrower than they have ever been. They are wider. The ability to offer a skill, a service, a creative work, or an insight to people who need it is not more limited than it was in any previous era. The accessibility of potential partners, potential clients, potential audiences, and potential collaborators has never been greater. And yet, the belief that only the salary channel carries legitimate supply persists because it is installed at a level of identity rather than a level of information. Information about other channels is widely available. What is scarce is the inner permission to receive from them. That permission comes from the source-centered mind, and that is the mind this teaching is working to restore. Wattles' vision of the person living in the certain way is a vision of someone who moves through a world of abundant channel possibility with an aligned inner state, taking purposeful action, doing excellent work within each present arrangement, while remaining naturally and calmly open to new channels forming. They are not grasping for every possible income stream simultaneously. They are not abandoning their responsibilities to pursue every idea that arrives. They are living from a source identity rather than a salary identity. And from that identity, channels form in the way that rivers find the sea. Not because the person forced them into existence, but because the inner state that aligns with the source is the state that the source uses to build new forms of visible supply. The mechanism is this. Source is the origin. Channels are the forms. The inner state determines which forms are available to a given life at a given moment. A closed, fear-based, salary-dependent inner state maintains and slightly adjusts one narrow channel. An open, source-centered, expectant inner state, combined with purposeful and excellent action, prepares the ground for multiple channels to form, expand, and deliver the full measure of what an unlimited source is capable of providing. This is the mechanism. This is how it works. And this is what changes when the inner error of channel worship is corrected. New channels do not open because a person decided to want more. Wanting more is common. New channels open because the inner state of a person has changed in a specific and fundamental way. The change is not in the level of desire, it is in the level of authority. The moment the salary is relocated from the position of source to the position of channel, the mind begins to function differently, not dramatically or overnight, but differently in the ways that matter most for what becomes possible. The first difference is perceptual. The world begins to look more available. Opportunities that were always present but were being filtered out begin to pass through the filter. Connections that were always carrying potential begin to be treated as worth developing. Ideas that were always arriving begin to be held long enough to be examined with genuine openness. This perceptual shift is not merely psychological in a shallow sense. Wattles was teaching something that operates at the level of what the mind is aligned to attract, receive, and recognize. A mind that is broadcasting the signal of one fixed channel is like a receiver tuned to a single frequency. It receives only what is on that frequency. Every other transmission passes through the same environment and is simply not received, not because it is not being transmitted, but because the receiver is not configured to pick it up. Relocating authority from the salary to the source does not create new transmissions. It reconfigures the receiver. The same world with the same abundance of potential channels begins to present itself differently to the newly open mind. Purposeful action is the next movement after the perceptual shift. Wattles was not teaching a passive approach to abundance. He was teaching that aligned action is the necessary outer expression of the aligned inner state. When the mind opens to new channels, the body must move in response. It must make the call. It must write the proposal. It must develop the skill that the new channel requires. It must have the conversation that the new connection invites. It must walk through the door that has opened in a direction the old salary mind would never have noticed. The inner shift creates perception. Perception creates possibility. Possibility without action remains possibility. Action is the mechanism through which the inner image of expanded supply is delivered into the visible world. The action required for new channels is often different in quality from the action required to maintain an existing channel. The employment channel requires a specific kind of action, showing up, performing the role, meeting the standards that the employer has defined. This action is clear, structured, and externally directed. New channel action is often less structured, more internally guided, and requires a different relationship with uncertainty. It requires making a move before the result is guaranteed. It requires trusting that an incomplete picture is worth following, rather than waiting for complete clarity before beginning. Wattles called this acting in the certain way. It is not reckless, it is aligned. It is the action of someone who trusts the source enough to take the next step without requiring a map of all the steps beyond it. One of the most important mechanics of new channel formation is the consistent maintenance of the clear mental image. Wattles returned to this repeatedly because it is the foundation on which everything else rests. The mental image of the desired life, held with clarity, gratitude, and the emotional quality of someone who is receiving rather than begging, is the instruction given to the formless substance. The formless substance organizes in the direction of the image. Channels begin to form that are consistent with the image. People appear who carry pieces of the picture. Situations arrange themselves in alignment with the inner command. This is not abstract. It is the actual mechanism by which thought becomes visible form, which is the central claim of Wattles's entire teaching. Gratitude plays a specific mechanical role in channel opening. Wattles was insistent about this, and it is worth understanding why beyond the obvious emotional benefits of thankfulness. Gratitude keeps the mind in close conscious contact with the source as origin. Every act of genuine gratitude is an inner acknowledgement that supply is flowing. It is an affirmation that channels are already operating. It counters the fear signal that says there is not enough by returning the attention to what is already arriving, however limited the current channel may be. And a mind that is in grateful contact with the source is a mind that is in the alignment from which new channels can form. Fear contracts. Gratitude expands. The expanded mind sees more. The mind that sees more is available to receive more. The pace of new channel formation cannot be predicted or forced. This is one of the most important things to understand about the mechanism, because the tendency of an anxious mind is to demand a timeline. How long will this take? When will the new channel arrive? How much will it produce? These questions are the old salary mind reasserting itself in a new context. It is trying to manage the source the way it managed the pay schedule. But the source does not operate on a schedule that the managing mind can calculate. It operates according to its own intelligent timing, responding to the quality of the inner state, moving through circumstances that are available, and organizing through people and situations that are in position to carry the new channel into form. The mind's job is not to manage the timing. The mind's job is to maintain the alignment. Discernment is an essential part of the mechanism that is often overlooked. Not every idea is a channel the source is forming. Not every opportunity that presents itself in an unexpected form is a door the source is opening. Some ideas arrive from anxiety, not inspiration. Some opportunities arrive from people whose interests are not aligned with genuine supply. The source-centered mind is not an uncritical acceptance of everything that presents itself as new. It is a mind that asks, with genuine stillness, whether this aligns with the clear inner image, whether the action required is purposeful rather than panicked, whether this represents movement toward the desired life, or simply movement away from present discomfort. Discernment is the internal capacity to tell the difference between aligned action and reactive action. Both may look like new channels from the outside. Only one of them is. A particularly important part of the mechanism is what happens to the current employment channel when the inner shift occurs. The salary does not become the enemy. The job does not become the obstacle. What changes is the emotional authority the job carries. Before the inner shift, the job is the source, and the emotional system is organized around its continuation. After the inner shift, the job is one channel among a possible many, and the emotional system is organized around the source behind all channels. This actually tends to improve the quality of the work done within the employment channel. A person who is no longer afraid of losing the job because they have relocated their ultimate authority to the source tends to work with more confidence, more creativity, and more genuine contribution than a person whose every action is filtered through the fear of losing the only channel they believe they have. The mechanism creates a kind of virtuous cycle. The inner shift opens perception. Expanded perception enables aligned action. Aligned action within the current channel improves the quality of what is offered there. Improved quality tends to create new connections, new recognitions, and new opportunities within the existing arrangement, as well as attracting new arrangements from outside it. The improved channel performance makes the person more visible to people and situations that are carrying new channel possibilities. And the calm, non-desperate energy of a source-centered person is itself a form of attraction. drawing toward them the collaborations, the conversations, and the opportunities that fear-centered energy tends to repel. New channels also tend to open in sequence rather than all at once. This is important to understand because the eager mind, freshly awakened to the possibility of multiple channels, may expect them all to materialize simultaneously and in clear form. The mechanism does not usually work this way. One small additional channel forms first. It may produce modest results initially, but the experience of it opening teaches the mind something that no teaching can fully provide from the outside. It teaches the experiential reality of a channel forming outside the salary. That experience becomes the new evidence on which an expanded inner state can be built. And the expanded inner state attracts the next channel, which arrives larger and more significant than the first, because the inner permission to receive has expanded through the experience of the first channel's formation. What Wallace Wattles was describing, when all the mechanics are assembled together, is a self-reinforcing process of supply expansion that begins with a single inner correction. The correction is the relocation of authority from channel to source. Everything else follows from that correction in a sequence that cannot be fully predicted, but can be trusted. The source knows more than the managing mind. The source sees channels that the calculating mind cannot see. The source is not limited by the employer's budget, the industry's conditions, the economy's mood, or any other visible constraint. The source is organizing in the direction of the aligned inner image at all times. The mind's work is to hold the image, maintain the alignment, take the purposeful action that is available, and remain open to the ways the source chooses to move that are not yet on any visible map. That is the mechanism. That is how new channels open. And that is how a single correction in the assignment of inner authority begins the expansion of an entire financial life. There is a phrase that this teaching asks you to carry forward into your daily life, and it is simple enough to hold in the mind through a difficult moment, and deep enough to carry the entire weight of the Wattles philosophy within it. The phrase is this: my income has channels, but my supply has source. Say it again, slowly. My income has channels. The paycheck, the client payment, the business revenue, the unexpected gift. These are channels, they are real, they are valued, they are honored. But my supply has source. The origin of what I receive is not the employer. It is not the market. It is not the economy. It is the formless substance, the infinite intelligence, the source from which all channels emerge. That is the shift. That single relocated sentence is the beginning of a different financial life. The shift is not a rejection of the current channel. This must be stated with absolute clarity, because the misunderstanding of this teaching can lead a person to develop a contemptuous attitude toward their employment, their employer, or their current income arrangement. That contempt is not the teaching. That contempt would actually undermine the channels that are presently operating, while providing nothing to replace them. The shift is not contempt. The shift is a reclassification. The job that was the source becomes the channel. The employer, who was the god of possibility, becomes one arrangement through which the source is presently flowing. The paycheck that was the ceiling becomes one current expression of a supply whose ceiling does not exist. Nothing is destroyed in this reclassification. Only the emotional assignment of authority is changed. And that change, small as it may appear from the outside, is one of the most significant inner movements a person can make. From the new identity, the relationship with work itself changes in quality. The person who approaches their employment from a source identity does not bring the desperation of someone whose entire existence depends on a single channel's approval. They bring the confidence of someone who is doing excellent work in the present arrangement while remaining inwardly aligned with the unlimited source behind it. They are not performing for survival. They are contributing from a position of identity. And the quality of contribution that comes from identity rather than fear is categorically different in ways that those around them often notice before the person articulates it themselves. Confidence is available. Creativity is available. The willingness to take intelligent risks within the current arrangement is available. These qualities tend to attract exactly the kind of recognition, opportunity, and connection that open new channels within and alongside the existing structure. Respecting the job without worshipping it is the practical expression of the shift in daily working life. To respect the job is to honor the exchange. You are receiving supply through this channel. The appropriate response to that supply is excellent, committed, purposeful work. To worship the job is to organize your entire emotional life around its continuation, to suppress your creative instincts to avoid its displeasure, to shrink your identity to fit its expectations, to measure your worth by its compensation structure. Respect is a posture of dignity. Worship is a posture of dependence. And dependence is not what Wallace Wattles was describing when he spoke of the person who lives in the certain way. The certain way requires dignity. It requires the inner posture of a person who knows they are connected to the unlimited source and who brings that knowing into every channel they currently inhabit. The new identity also changes the relationship with fear. Fear of job loss, which was once an existential threat to a salary-dependent identity, becomes something that can be held differently from a source identity. This does not mean that job loss becomes trivial. It means that the mind, when it encounters the possibility of a channel changing, no longer experiences it as the loss of the source. It experiences it as the change of a channel. A channel can change. A channel can narrow. A channel can close. And behind every channel that has ever changed or closed, the source remains. The source has never lost one of its channels and been diminished. The source is as full as it has always been. What changes is not the source. What changes is the form through which the source is currently delivering to a specific life. When that distinction is held in the mind with real conviction, the quality of fear that accompanies financial uncertainty changes fundamentally. The inner shift also restores a person's relationship with opportunity. From the old salary identity, opportunities that do not immediately resemble income are processed through the filter of irrelevance or risk. From the new source identity, opportunities are processed through the filter of potential. Could this be a channel forming? Could this person be a connection through whom the source is beginning to move? Could this idea be an impression from the formless substance pointing toward a new arrangement? These questions do not require reckless action in response to every opportunity. They require an openness of perception that the salary identity systematically denies. The source identity creates a mind that is available to see what is already present and moving, and that availability is itself a form of channel opening. The shift changes the spoken words. This deserves its own moment, because the words a person habitually uses to describe their financial life are among the most revealing indicators of their current inner identity. The salary-dependent person says, "I cannot afford it. I only make a certain amount. There is nothing I can do about it. I am stuck in this job. My income will never be enough." Each of these statements is not merely a description of a financial fact. It is a declaration of a source. It is an inner assignment of authority to the current channel as the permanent and total measure of possible supply. The source-centered person, holding the new identity, speaks differently. Not with false optimism or denial of present difficulty, but with language that preserves the authority of the source. The way is opening. I am available to new channels. The source that has provided through this channel can provide through others. My supply is not limited to what I currently see. The new identity does not arrive fully formed on the first day it is chosen. This is important to acknowledge because people who attempt the shift and then find themselves reverting to the old salary identity in moments of pressure often conclude that the shift did not work, when in fact, what they are experiencing is the entirely normal process of a new identity establishing itself. The old identity is deeply familiar. It is supported by years of experience, cultural reinforcement, and emotional habit. The new identity is initially a choice, an intention, a direction. It must be reinforced daily in practice, in speech, in the quality of thoughts that are allowed to settle, and those that are redirected. The shift is not an event. It is a commitment. And the commitment, held with consistency, eventually becomes the dominant inner reality from which the financial life reorganizes itself. The most precise expression of the shift in the Wattles language is this: you are moving from the mind that manages channels to the mind that trusts the source. The managing mind calculates, controls, fears, negotiates, and defends. The trusting mind imagines, aligns, acts purposefully, receives, and remains open. Both minds are present in every person. The question is, which one is dominant? The salary identity installs the managing mind as the dominant force in all financial decisions. The source identity installs the trusting mind as the dominant force, while allowing the managing mind to play its appropriate secondary role in practical execution. This is not the elimination of practical intelligence. It is the restoration of a proper order in which spiritual trust leads and practical management follows, rather than practical fear leading and spiritual trust being left for the moments when the fear has temporarily quieted. Every day inside the new identity is an act of reclaiming authority for the source, not loudly or performatively, but in the quiet inner moment when the fear speaks and the choice is made to answer from identity rather than from anxiety. When the paycheck arrives and the gratitude is directed not only to the employer, but to the source behind the employer. When an idea arrives and instead of dismissing it, the question is asked with genuine openness. Might the source be beginning a new channel through this? When a connection is made, and instead of filtering it through its immediate salary relevance, it is recognized as a potential passage through which the formless substance might be beginning to move. These are not dramatic moments, they are ordinary moments. But they are the moments in which the new identity is either confirmed or abandoned. And it is in those ordinary moments, chosen consistently and with awareness, that the financial life begins, slowly and then with gathering momentum, to reflect the truth of an unlimited source. The shift can be stated in its simplest form this way. Before the shift, your question was, how much is the salary? After the shift, your question is, how wide can the channel be? And behind that question, the source is already preparing the answer. Every teaching that does not include a practice remains an idea, and an idea that is not practiced does not transform a life. It decorates it. The inner shift described in this teaching requires a daily practice that keeps the source-centered identity active and prevents the salary identity from quietly reclaiming its position of authority through the normal pressures and habits of daily life. The practice is not complicated. It does not require hours. It requires consistency, intention, and the willingness to engage with it sincerely rather than mechanically. Begin each day with a single act of orientation. Before the noise of the day begins, before the notifications, before the obligations, before the mental calculation of what must be covered and what is arriving on the next pay date, take a moment to re-establish the inner position. The position is this: today, the source that flows through all channels is active in my life. The salary I am receiving is one channel through which supply is currently moving. It is real, it is valued, and I am grateful for it. But the source behind it is unlimited, and I am available today to perceive and receive through whatever additional channels the source is forming. This is not a lengthy meditation. It is a conscious inner positioning, taken before the managing mind has had the opportunity to install the day's fear calculations as the governing framework. During the workday, the practice takes the form of a single recurring question asked in the presence of ideas, conversations, and opportunities. The question is this: what other channel might the source be forming through this? Not every idea is a channel signal. Not every conversation is a divine introduction. But the practice of asking the question is what keeps the mind's perceptual filter open rather than closed. You do not have to act on every answer the question produces. You only have to remain in the habit of asking it. The asking prevents the automatic dismissal. The asking creates the space in which a genuine channel signal, when it arrives, is actually noticed rather than filtered out before it reaches conscious awareness. In the evening, the practice includes a brief examination of the day through the lens of supply awareness. What arrived today? Not only in the form of salary or income, but in the form of information, connection, opportunity, reduced obligation, creative insight, or unexpected provision of any kind. The purpose of this examination is not to convince yourself that everything is wonderful when it is not. It is to keep the mind's attention in contact with what the source is already delivering, rather than only in contact with what is missing or insufficient. The mind that notices only lack rehearses lack. The mind that also notices supply, even limited and partial supply, is rehearsing the truth that the source is already active. And the inner image that is rehearsed with consistent attention is the inner image that becomes the dominant signal being sent to the formless substance. Once each week, set aside a slightly longer period for what might be called a channel inventory. In this time, without urgency or pressure, ask yourself, what channels of supply do I currently have operating in my life? What channels are possible that I have not yet pursued? What opportunities have appeared recently that I dismissed without full consideration? What connections are currently in my life whose potential I have not yet genuinely explored? What skills, services, insights, or creative works do I possess that could serve others and create exchange? This is not a planning session driven by financial anxiety. It is a source-centered review conducted from the identity of someone who believes the formless substance is already at work forming new channels and who is willing to honestly examine whether the filter has been open or closed in the past week. Throughout the day, when the fear voice speaks, and it will speak, the practice is to consciously restate the central phrase, "My income has channels, but my supply has source." Not as a magic formula that eliminates the fear by force, but as a deliberate return of authority to the proper position. The fear voice is the old salary identity, speaking from its habitual position. The central phrase is the new identity speaking from its chosen position. The daily practice is the act of choosing the new identity consistently enough that it gradually becomes the default rather than the effort. This takes time. It takes repetition. It takes the willingness to return to the practice on the days when it feels hollow and the fear has been loudest. Those are precisely the days when the practice matters most. The practice also includes a specific relationship with gratitude that is more precise than general thankfulness. Each time the salary or any other current channel delivers supply, the gratitude is directed consciously to two levels. The first is the channel itself, the employer, the client, the person, the arrangement, the mechanism through which supply is currently arriving. The second is the source behind the channel, the formless substance, the infinite intelligence, the unlimited origin from which the channel is being sustained. This two-level gratitude reinforces the distinction between channel and source at the emotional level, not just the intellectual level. And emotional reinforcement is how beliefs move from the surface of the mind into the deeper levels where they actually govern behavior. Finally, the daily practice includes a specific discipline about spoken language. Every time the automatic fear language of salary dependence arises, in internal thought or in conversation, the practice is to consciously choose language that reflects the new identity. Not the language of denial or false certainty about outcomes that have not yet arrived, but the language of a person who trusts the source while honoring present reality. Instead of, "There is no way. There may be a channel forming that I have not yet seen." Instead of, "I will never make more than this." The source is not limited to what this channel currently carries. Instead of, "If I lose this job, it is over. If this channel changes, the source remains." These linguistic corrections are not performances for others. They are acts of inner alignment that keep the mind in the position from which new channels are most readily perceived, received, and developed. The daily practice is not a burden. When it is entered with genuine intention, it is a form of daily contact with the source, a daily renewal of the inner authority that wealth flows from, and a daily act of identity maintenance that gradually makes the source-centered mind the natural, automatic, and dominant way of relating to money, opportunity, and supply. Do not abandon the practice when nothing visible has yet changed. The practice is preparing the inner ground. The visible changes will follow the inner preparation. They always have. They always will. This is not a promise of certainty about timing. It is a statement of law. The inner state shapes the outer form. Shape the inner state daily, and the outer form will follow. There will come a day, probably not long after you have received this teaching and genuinely committed to the inner shift, when you sit down and look at your financial situation with honest eyes, and nothing has visibly changed. The paycheck is still the same amount. The obligations have not decreased. The new channel you were beginning to sense has not yet materialized into something you can deposit or report. The idea that felt promising is still only an idea. The connection who seemed relevant has not yet translated into anything concrete. The world, from the outside, looks exactly as it did before. And in that moment, the old salary mind will speak with all the authority of visible evidence behind it. It will say, the teaching was interesting, the shift felt real, but the paycheck is still the only door. Nothing else is open, nothing else is coming. Come back. Come back to the only thing that has ever consistently paid. This is the test, not the test of whether the teaching is philosophically correct, the test of whether the new identity is genuinely established or only superficially adopted. Every significant inner shift eventually faces the moment when visible evidence has not yet aligned with the inner change. This is not a sign that the shift failed. This is the standard behavior of the visible world, which always lags behind the inner world in ways that require faith to bridge. Wattles was honest about this. He did not teach that the visible results of aligned inner state arrive instantly. He taught that they arrive inevitably, if the inner state is held with consistency and accompanied by purposeful action. The gap between the inner change and the visible result is the exact location where faith must live. And faith that is not tested is not yet faith, it is comfort. The practice during this period is not passive waiting. It is the combination of continued excellent work within the existing channel and the continued maintenance of the new inner identity. You continue to show up to the employment. You continue to do excellent, committed, purposeful work within the salary channel. You honor the exchange. You honor the obligations that the channel is presently meeting. You do not withdraw your effort from the current channel because you have decided the source will provide through new ones. That is not faith. That is recklessness wearing the costume of faith. True faith works. It acts in the certain way within every channel that is currently open while remaining available to new channels forming. The specific discipline of this period is the maintenance of the inner image under pressure. The image of the financial life you are moving toward must be held with the same clarity and the same emotional quality of receiving that it was held with in moments of peace and openness. This is much harder than holding the image in a calm moment. The image maintained in the middle of visible contradiction is the image that carries the most power because it is the image that has resisted the strongest pressure to collapse. Wattles spoke of holding the image with unwavering faith. Unwavering means it does not waver when the evidence presses against it. It means it is held in the middle of the test, with the same clarity it is held in the middle of ease. That is the standard. And that standard is not comfortable. But it is the standard that the formless substance responds to. There is a specific temptation that arises during this testing period that must be named and understood. The temptation is to force the visible world to match the inner image through frantic or desperate action. The person who has been holding the source identity and has not yet seen visible results may begin to generate anxious, scattered action that is no longer aligned with the clear image. They may chase multiple opportunities simultaneously without the calmness and discernment that characterized the aligned action of earlier weeks. They may make decisions that are driven not by purposeful movement toward the inner image, but by the panic of wanting visible evidence that the shift is working. This forced action is the managing mind reasserting itself under pressure. It is the salary identity dressed in new terminology. Recognize it. Return to stillness. Return to the image. Return to the source. Then act from that return, not from the panic. The language discipline becomes most critical during this period. When colleagues, family members, or well-meaning friends observe that nothing has visibly changed and offer the reasonable suggestion that the salary is the only reliable reality, the source-centered mind must respond with language that reflects its true identity without performing false certainty or dismissing the concern of others. You do not need to convince anyone else that the source is unlimited. You do not need to defend the teaching to people who are not ready to receive it. You only need to maintain internally the language that reflects your actual inner position. This is between you and the source. The outer conversation does not need to carry the full weight of your inner shift. The inner conversation must. The test period is also when the channel inventory practice becomes most important. Continue asking the daily question. Continue noticing what is present that has not yet been recognized as a potential channel. Continue following up on connections that feel relevant. Continue developing ideas that align with the inner image without abandoning present responsibilities. The test is not a period of inner collapse followed by a period of outer rescue. It is a period of sustained alignment during which the inner state continues to prepare the ground, the action continues to water the seeds, and the source continues to organize the channels that are not yet visible but are already in motion toward form. The test is the time between the seed and the first sign of growth. The seed is not failing because it has not yet broken the surface. The seed is doing exactly what it must do. Let the process be what it is. Refusing to return to the old declaration is one of the most important acts of the testing period. The old declaration is the set of spoken and unspoken sentences that assigned total authority to the salary. My job is all I have. There is no other way for me. I cannot afford to think about other channels when I am barely managing this one. These are the declarations of the old identity, and in the testing period, they will feel very honest. They will feel more honest than the new identity. The visible evidence supports them. The bills support them. The absence of visible new channels supports them, and you must refuse to speak them anyway, not because they describe false circumstances, but because speaking them reinstates the old inner authority and closes the perceptual filter that the new identity was working to keep open. Do not speak the old declarations. Speak the new ones, not with forced enthusiasm, with quiet, committed, inner authority. The test period is also a time for genuine self-examination about whether the action being taken is aligned or merely anxious. Ask yourself, am I doing excellent work in the current channel? Am I showing up with full presence and genuine contribution? Am I following up on the connections and ideas that have arrived? Am I maintaining the daily practice with consistency? Am I holding the inner image with emotional quality, or have I been holding a fearful wish instead? These questions are not self-attacks. They are honest diagnostic tools. The answers reveal not whether you are failing, but whether the inner state is genuinely aligned or has quietly reverted to the salary identity while maintaining the language of the new one. The source responds to the actual inner state, not to the performed one. There is a point in the test period when something small shifts. It is rarely the dramatic arrival of a large new channel. It is more often a small signal that was not present before, a conversation that feels different in quality, an idea that arrives with unusual clarity, a connection that follows up unexpectedly, an obligation that reduces in a way that was not calculated. The mind that is still in the aligned position will recognize these small shifts as exactly what they are: the beginning of a new channel forming. The mind that has reverted to the salary identity will dismiss them as too small to matter. This is the moment of the test within the test. Will you recognize the small first movement of the source? Or will you require it to arrive in the full form of a salary before you acknowledge that the source has responded? The answer you give in that moment tells you exactly where your inner authority currently resides. Hold the position, continue the work, maintain the image, speak the new language, follow up on what the source is beginning to show you. Do not collapse back into the salary identity just because the visible world has not yet fully caught up to the inner shift. The visible world follows the inner world. It always has. The law does not suspend itself during the testing period. It continues operating in the direction of the aligned inner image. Your work during the test is not to create the channels. Your work is to remain aligned long enough for the channels that are already forming in the invisible to become visible. The source is not testing you to see if you deserve the expansion. The source is not withholding. The source is organizing. And organizing takes the time it takes. What the test requires is not perfect certainty. It requires the refusal to collapse. That refusal is enough. You will know that the shift has genuinely taken hold, not when the new channels have arrived in full visible form, but when your internal response to your salary has changed. This is the first and most reliable sign. Before the shift, the salary arrived with either relief or anxiety. depending on whether it was sufficient for the immediate obligations. After the genuine shift, the salary arrives with gratitude for the channel and an inner acknowledgement of the source behind it, not as a mechanical performance, as an actual felt experience. The paycheck becomes evidence that the source is flowing rather than evidence of the limit of what is possible. This change in the felt quality of receiving the salary is the inner sign that the new identity has moved from the level of intention into the level of lived experience. The second sign is a reduction in the panic that used to accompany financial uncertainty. This does not mean financial uncertainty becomes comfortable or trivial. Real obligations require real resources, and the reality of tight circumstances is not dissolved by inner shift alone. But the quality of the fear changes. Before the shift, financial uncertainty is experienced as an existential threat because the salary was the source, and any threat to the salary was therefore a threat to all possible supply. After the shift, financial uncertainty is experienced as a challenge within one particular channel, behind which the source remains active and unlimited. The fear is still present, but it is proportionate rather than existential. It does not consume the entire inner space. It occupies its appropriate place, while the source-centered identity continues to hold the larger field. The third sign is the arrival of new ideas with a noticeably different quality. Ideas that once arrived and were immediately dismissed begin to linger in the mind long enough to be genuinely examined. The inner question, what other channel might the source be forming through this, has become a natural first response rather than an effortful practice. This means the perceptual filter has genuinely shifted. The mind is no longer automatically removing channel signals before they reach conscious awareness. It is receiving them and processing them with openness. Some of these ideas will still be dismissed after honest consideration. The difference is that now the dismissal comes after genuine examination rather than before it. The filter is open. Discernment is operating. These are two different things, and the shift from the first to the second is a real and measurable inner change. The fourth sign is less anxiety about what others think of your financial position. Before the shift, the salary defined the identity, and therefore any judgment about the salary was a judgment about the self. The person locked in the salary identity experiences comments about income, employment, or financial position as attacks on the core of who they are. After the shift, the salary is a channel, and the identity is grounded in the source. Comments about the channel are just comments about a current arrangement. They do not touch the core identity. This inner freedom from the social dimension of the salary is one of the quieter but very real consequences of the shift, and it creates a dignity in financial conversations that was previously unavailable. The fifth sign is the appearance of calmer, more purposeful action within the current channel. The person who has genuinely shifted to the source identity tends to produce better work within the salary channel than they did before, not because they are trying harder in a frantic sense, but because the quality of contribution changes when it is coming from a place of dignity rather than fear. They bring more creativity. They take more appropriate risks within the professional context. They communicate with more confidence. They form better working relationships. These improvements in the quality of current channel performance are often noticed by others before the person has fully articulated what has changed internally. The inner shift produces outer changes in ways that feel, to observers, like a new level of professional presence, even when the underlying cause is entirely an inner spiritual reorientation. The sixth sign is a change in the response to closed doors and denied opportunities. Before the shift, a rejected raise, a passed-over promotion, or a missed opportunity within the current channel is experienced as a verdict about the person's total worth and total possibility. After the shift, the same event is processed differently. It is a channel that did not expand in this particular direction, at this particular time, within this particular arrangement. It does not define the total of what the source can provide. It is information about this channel at this moment, not a statement about the source's capacity or intention regarding this life. The person who responds to a closed internal door with calm and continued openness to other channel possibilities is demonstrating in real time that the source identity has replaced the salary identity as the governing inner reality. The seventh sign is a quieting of the resentment that often accompanies salary limitation. The person who has identified entirely with their salary as the source tends to carry a deep resentment toward the structures that limit it: the employer, the industry, the economy, the circumstances that keep the channel narrow. This resentment is a natural product of the belief that these structures hold the source. If the structure controls the source, then the structure is the problem, and resentment is the emotional response to a problem that cannot be solved. After the shift, the structures are channels, not the source. The employer does not hold the source, the industry does not hold the source, the economy does not hold the source. The resentment dissolves, not because the structures have changed, but because they have been correctly understood as channels rather than origins. And channels can expand, channels can multiply, channels can be replaced by wider ones. The source behind them remains unchanged. The eighth sign is genuine excitement about a wider range of possibilities than the salary channel offers. This excitement is not manic or impractical. It is the natural inner response of a mind that has genuinely relocated its authority to the source and is beginning to see the breadth of what an unlimited source can deliver. The person begins to notice the landscape of opportunity more clearly. They begin to find conversations about new channel possibilities energizing rather than threatening. They begin to hold their current employment with a lighter grip, not because they are careless about it, but because they no longer need to hold it with both hands in a white-knuckle determination to prevent it from being the last door that ever opens for them. The grip loosens, the field widens. The quality of daily life, even before the visible finances have fully changed, begins to carry the feeling of expansion rather than constriction. These signs do not all arrive simultaneously, and their arrival does not follow a predictable schedule. Some will appear quickly, within days or weeks of the genuine commitment to the inner shift. Others will take longer because they require the old identity patterns to dissolve at deeper levels before the new identity can fully express them. Be patient with the pace. Recognize each sign when it arrives. Let each sign become new evidence for the new identity, rather than discounting it because it is not yet the large visible financial change you are ultimately moving toward. The signs are the inner world beginning to change. The large visible changes are the inner world having fully changed. Both are real, both matter. And the person who learns to recognize and honor the inner signs is the person who maintains the inner state long enough for the visible transformation to complete itself in full. Here is the sentence that contains this entire teaching in a form you can carry with you into any financial moment. My salary is a channel, but the source is unlimited. Not, my salary does not matter. Not, I do not need to work. Not, the money will come without any effort on my part. Those are not the teaching. Those are the distortions of a teaching that did not travel carefully enough through the mind that received it. The true teaching is in that single sentence. My salary is a channel. It carries supply. It is real. It is operational. It is valued. I do my excellent work to honor the channel. I meet my obligations through the channel. I am grateful for what the channel delivers. But the source behind the channel is unlimited. The source is not the employer. The source is not the industry. The source is not the economy. The source is the formless intelligence from which all channels emerge and through which all forms of supply take shape. Read that sentence again in the presence of everything you have been feeling about your financial life. Read it in the presence of the pay cycle that feels too short. Read it in the presence of the raise that was not what you hoped. Read it in the presence of the industry ceiling you have been pressing against for years. Read it in the presence of the fear that said the paycheck is all there is and all there will be. My salary is a channel, but the source is unlimited. Let the second half of that sentence reach the place inside you where the fear lives. Not to eliminate the fear by force, but to give the fear the correct information. The fear is afraid of the loss of the source. Tell the fear that the salary is not the source. The source is unlimited. The source has not changed. The source does not have a payroll department. The source does not require approval from your employer. The source does not recognize industry ceilings. The source is still full. The source is still flowing. The source is still capable of opening a new channel beside the one you currently have. Wallace Wattles spent his life teaching that the formless substance is not distant and it is not stingy. It is present and it is generous. It responds to the inner state of the person who is aligned with it. It takes form in the direction of the clear mental image held with gratitude and faith. It is not waiting for the right economy. It is not waiting for the job market to improve. It is not waiting for your employer to decide to pay more. It is waiting, if that word can be used at all, for the mind that is addressing it to speak from identity rather than from fear. And the sentence is the identity speaking. My salary is a channel, but the source is unlimited. That is not a wish. That is a declaration of where authority resides. That is the inner position from which wealth expands. Do not say this sentence only on the days when the finances feel adequate. Say it on the day the bank account is low. Say it on the day the raise was denied. Say it on the day the industry news is not encouraging. Say it on the day the anxiety is loudest. Because it is precisely on those days that the old salary identity is most powerfully reasserting its authority, and precisely on those days that the declaration is most needed as a deliberate act of inner realignment. The declaration is not a performance of optimism. It is a return of authority to its proper location. And every time you return the authority to the source, rather than granting it to the channel responds in ways that the fear could never have negotiated. Honor the salary. Honor the work. Honor the commitment. Honor the colleagues and the organization through which the supply currently flows. These are not small things. They are the present forms of the source's activity in your life. And the way you honor them is by doing excellent work, by treating the channel with the respect it deserves as one expression of a larger supply, by releasing the resentment that came from confusing the channel with the source, and by holding the inner image of the expanded financial life that you are moving toward with gratitude, faith, and the quiet confidence of someone who knows that the source is unlimited and that the present channel is not the last word. Honor the pipe that carries the water, and remember every day where the water comes from. The declaration is also a form of daily practice in the language of the new identity. Each time you say it, you are reinforcing at the emotional level the distinction between channel and source that is the central correction of this entire teaching. Each repetition makes the new identity more natural. Each repetition loosens the grip of the old salary authority. Each repetition opens the perceptual filter slightly wider. Each repetition prepares the inner ground for one more degree of alignment with the unlimited source. None of this is dramatic. It is the quiet, consistent work of a person who has chosen to live from the truth of the source rather than the fear of the channel. That choice made daily is the foundation of everything this teaching has been building toward. If you carry one thing from this teaching, let it be this: the limit was never in the source. The limit was in the assignment of authority. You gave the salary the authority that belongs to the source, and the salary, being one limited channel, could only give you back the ceiling of its own dimensions. Return the authority to the source where it belongs, and the channel you currently have will function better. Additional channels will begin to form, and the financial life will slowly but certainly expand beyond the ceiling that was never the source's intention for you. My salary is a channel, but the source is unlimited. Write this, speak this, hold this, return to this on the difficult days. This is the teaching. This is the law. This is the correction that changes everything. If this teaching has spoken to the part of you that has been quietly confusing the channel with the source, there is one action that will anchor it in a way that no amount of silent agreement can match. Write the declaration in the space below. Write, my salary is a channel, but the source is unlimited. Not because this channel is asking for your engagement, because you are choosing, in this moment, to speak the new identity out loud. Because the declaration written is the declaration committed. Because the act of placing those words in a visible form is itself a small but real act of inner authority. Write it for yourself. Let it be the first public expression of the new identity you are choosing. And know that every person who writes it alongside you is also, in their own life, relocating the authority from a channel to the source. You are not alone in this correction. The masters who taught this law are not alone, and neither are you. There is more that the masters have to say. There are teachings about the specific nature of the channels the source forms when the mind stops defending limitation. There are teachings about what to do when the channel closes entirely and the source must open a completely new arrangement. There are teachings about how the inner image, held with precision and faith, instructs the formless substance to take the specific forms that a life has been prepared to receive. These are the territories that await in the teachings ahead. If you are ready to continue walking through the laws that the masters devoted their lives to understanding, remain with this channel. The next teaching will meet you when you are ready. The source that brought you here is not finished with you yet. There is more to receive, more to understand, and more to become. Walk forward in the certain way.